Created by Chris Claremont and John Byrne, Pyro, or St. John Allerdyce, was first introduced in the X-Men comics all the way back in October 1980. While he was initially known as a renowned journalist, Pyro's mutant abilities could not be hidden for much longer, and he soon earned a reputation as the man who controls the living flame. Pyro reached great heights of success after joining the Brotherhood of Mutants, and he has certainly had a roller coaster of life where he had dealt with the legacy virus and eventually returned to life. Today, we will be exploring his origins and physiological features in great detail, and especially glance at this fire manipulation powers. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
And yet here she is, with others her own age, learning, being accepted.
Who is Pyro? What is Pyro's early life like? Raised in Sydney, St. John Allerdyce lived a normal life until puberty, when his powers first started manifesting. Even then, he decided that it was best for him to keep his powers hidden unless it was an emergency, and he tried to live a civil life without using his fire manipulation techniques to make a profit. He got a job as a journalist in an Australian wire service and traveled to countries such as Indonesia and Vietnam to report current events. All his travel experiences motivated him to write his books, and he eventually found a niche market in the romance genre. While he did not receive much critical acclaim, Allerdyce did become quite popular among the masses and gained quite a following. Over time, he stumbled across Mystique and decided it was time for him to join her Brotherhood of Evil Mutants and put his fiery powers to use. What was Pyro's role in the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants? After joining this terrorist organization, Allerdyce dropped his name and adopted a new persona as Pyro, a mutant who can control any living flame. The Brotherhood also garnered a lot of attention after they attempted to kill Senator Robert Kelly and infiltrate the Pentagon, but the X-Men managed to deal with them before they could do any actual harm. During their attempt to infiltrate the Pentagon, Pyro faced Storm, who used her ability to summon monsoons and render him incapable of using his fire manipulation techniques. He was also in a near-death situation after Wolverine targeted him, and most of the Brotherhood was captured and sent off to a prison facility on Wrecker's Island. Soon enough, Mystique and Rogue broke them out, and Pyro continued to work with the team in their clashes against the Avengers, wherein Pyro stood his ground against the Scarlet Witch and Beast. He was eventually overpowered by Hawkeye and thrown into the Windust maximum security prison, where the Space Knight Rom gave him a hard time. Despite all his attempts to break out alongside Avalanche and the Blob, Pyro was stuck behind bars for a while, and the others managed to escape. Pyro was later seen with the Brotherhood after Rogue betrayed Mystique and joined the X-Men, which left Mystique in a rage. She was determined to reassemble her old team and exact revenge upon the X-Men, and they devised a plan to stage a terrorist attack to trap Colossus. After luring Colossus in, Pyro was tasked with harming his steel body with scorching flames. While this part of the plan was a success, it was not long before the X-Men captured Pyro once again, and Storm was more than happy to use her powers to nullify his flames. However, they managed to evade capture this time around as Mystique struck a deal for them to walk away in exchange for Professor X's safety. Why did Pyro join the Freedom Force? After Mystique managed to infiltrate the Pentagon, she became close friends with Val Cooper and proposed the Brotherhood's alliance to the Commission on Superhuman Activities. The Brotherhood was then renamed as Freedom Force, and Cooper sent them on missions such as apprehending Magneto. During this face-off, Pyro faced Colossus and was even knocked out mid-fight, but things were resolved when Magneto decided to surrender on his own. Soon enough, Pyro was labeled as a government-sanctioned agent, and he was sent on several missions to capture superhumans such as the X-Men and the Avengers. He also crossed paths with the New Mutants and X-Factor on a mission to track down Rusty Collins. After John Walker was appointed as Captain America for the Commission on Superhuman Activities, Pyro and the rest of the Freedom Force were asked to pitch in for his training. Often made fun of him alongside Avalanche and the Blob, and made some fun memories. Later, Freedom Force decided to reach out to the X-Men and convince them to turn themselves in to safeguard their lives after Destiny predicted their imminent death. This discussion turned into a clash in Dallas, where they realized they were actually needed to work together to defeat the adversary. While they were triumphant in defeating the adversary, the X-Men sacrificed their lives for the mission to succeed, which enraged the New Mutants and X-Factor. They reached out to the Freedom Force for explanations, and Pyro was later tasked with the responsibility of enforcing the Mutant Registration Act. He made several calls, such as arresting the Alliance of Evil and creating a mock trial to lure the residents. Pyro worked alongside teammates such as Blob, and they also landed in a scuffle with Daredevil in their attempts to arrest Amanda. In an extremely dangerous battle, Freedom Force fought against the Reavers on Muir Island, where they lost Destiny and Stonewall. Losing such key members of the team kickstarted their downfall, and they were finally disbanded after Mystique's disappearance and their failure to capture the Hulk, Firestar, and Cable. In their last mission, they followed Crimson Commando to Kuwait to Reinhold Kurtzman, but things went downhill after Desert Sword attacked Pyro. In a moment of fury, Pyro decided to burn Kurtzman to death, an act which compelled the Commando to abandon both Pyro and Blob at the Desert Sword mercy. While this could have meant the end for them, they somehow managed to survive by contributing their skills as bodyguards to the Desert's ranking officer. How did the legacy virus impact Pyro? Over time, Toad rescued Blob and Pyro and convinced them to join his new Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. They allied with Morlocks and fought against X-Force, an incident that they managed to escape except for Sauron. Finally, Sauron returned to them after convincing the X-Patriots to join the team, but this attempt was thwarted by Val Cooper's brand new organization, the X-Factor. While the Brotherhood was making progress with discovering new mutants, Pyro discovered that he had been tainted by the legacy virus, known to be lethal to mutants. Pyro tried to get some aid from Jonathan Chambers, even if he drained Pyro of his powers for his own benefit. He stayed at the Empyrean Center to continue with his treatment, and he also encountered Avalanche and Commando and learned that they had now joined Project Wide Awake. After realizing that his former mates had refused to let the virus take over their lives, Pyro had a newfound determination to go out in style and glory. He started wreaking havoc at crime scenes and even got into a clash with Daredevil, where he somehow managed to retain some control over his abilities despite being impacted by the virus. There was no doubt that the virus had gotten the better of him, and he accidentally even set a church on fire while chatting with the priest. To contain the damage caused by his illness, the X-Men intervened, but Avalanche soon showed up to rescue him. However, the X-Factor eventually managed to capture Pyro, as they momentarily believed that he would potentially murder Grayson Creed. In due course, Pyro resorted to robbing a bank to get some money to fund his treatment against the legacy virus. He had come into contact with a scientist who could potentially extract his mutant genes, but he was unfortunately shot many times during the robbery. Before he could go through with the treatment, a mutant surgeon named Dr. Cecilia Reyes treated his gunshot wounds, but not for long, as he managed to escape the hospital as well. Even though the virus made it difficult for him to keep going, Pyro was determined to find the cure and then acted under Exodus's instructions to get his hands on high evolutionary isotope E. However, they failed in this mission, and Exodus abandoned his team of mutants in the Savage Lands. Somehow, Pyro found his way back on his own after one of the X-Men named Cerebro chased him after him all over Nebraska. By this point, he was entirely exhausted, and he was soon taken into custody by S.H.I.E.L.D. Surprisingly, he showed up at Senator Robert Kelly's presidential rally, where his old teammates intended to assassinate Kelly. However, Pyro intervened and cautioned the X-Men about their plans, even if he was incredibly fatigued by the virus. In the last moments, he made his way to Kelly and pleaded with him to stop waging civil war between humans and mutants before dying in his arms. How did Pyro return after his death? Even though Pyro had succumbed to the legacy virus, Selene resurrected him when she was trying to create a troop of revived mutants. He worked alongside Berserker to invade Utopia and face the X-Force, and he somehow returned to life on 2 other occasions when Iceman confronted him. Eventually, Mentalo brainwashed Pyro alongside other mutants, and Weapon X-Force stepped in to save him and free him from capture. After the X-Men's apparent death, Pyro was seen working alongside Joseph's Brotherhood in Transia to attack a military base. However, the X-Men had not entirely gone away, and Cyclops knocked Pyro out in this encounter. While he did return to life in random story arcs, it was established that he finally died, even though the details of his demise remain unknown. What is Pyro's role in the Marauders? After a majority of the mutants established themselves on Krakoa, Charles Xavier's created a way to resurrect mutants and tried it on Pyro during the initial experimentation stages. This made him one of the first mutants to come back to life, and he was initially quite annoyed when he learned that he was Xavier's guinea pig. He then sneaked onto Pyrade's ship, dozed off, and found himself in the newly formed Marauders team upon waking up. He then worked with them to defend Krakoa from the Russian army, and the Marauders went on to become a marine rescue force. Pyro worked with them to rescue mutants and helped them reach Krakoa, and he went on many missions to defeat Batroc the Leaper, hijack the Black King ship, and even meet bishops in Taipei. During this last mission, they learned about Professor Xavier's murder, and Pyro then got a giant skull tattoo over his face while possessing this news. Over the course of the next few days, the Marauders got a huge ship from Emma Frost, and Pyro was quite excited to embark on many more adventures with the team. He played a huge role in rescuing mutant refugees from Brazil and Madripoor, but unfortunately, a tiny yellow jacket discreetly entered Pyro's body during these missions. However, this organism was forced to leave Pyro alone even before they returned to Krakoa, and Pyro then decided to deal with the inner circle of Verenity. They enlisted the White Queen's help to defeat Verendi's forces in Madripoor, and Pyro was then spotted working alongside the X-Men during the X of Swords tournament. He continued to stick with the Marauders as they established themselves in Madripoor, and he worked with Bishop and Iceman to build facilities there. They also fought the Reavers in Madripoor's navy, and Pyro had such a great impact on this entire operation that even the White Queen saluted him for his contributions to Krakoa's development. What are Pyro's manipulation abilities? Pyro's mutant abilities allowed him to manipulate any existing fire in many different ways, from manipulating their sizes and enhancing their intestines to giving them any desired shape. He often uses technique to boost existing flames, to attack his opponents, or give them specific shapes, such as massive birds, talons, or golems. Pyro referred to his fiery creations as the living flame, and his abilities were linked to his imagination, giving him a lot of creative freedom. He had absolute control over these creations, but only under the condition that he was entirely focused on them, and he had strong-willed determination to keep the flame going. Pyro once used his flames to enhance Colossus' steel form, and he almost melted. And he once even displayed the ability to manipulate Firestar's heat blast even if they were technically not flames. Is Pyro resistant to fire and heat? Since Pyro can manipulate any living flames, he is immune to his own fiery creations without a doubt. He has often absorbed these flames into his skin and heart before skillfully riddicting them from his opponents without suffering any injuries. However, he is not entirely resistant to all kinds of fire, and he can be burned by any flames that are not under his manipulation. What are Pyro's weaknesses in fire control? While Pyro can handle any fire around him, he cannot generate fire from scratch. Simply put, Pyro relies on external fire sources and can only manipulate existing fire. After he joined the Marauders, he established a partnership with Lockheed, who could breathe fire, and the two often worked together to make up for their individual weaknesses. Pyro's ability to manipulate flames was also not entirely foolproof, as opponents such as Storm could conjure intense rainstorms to extinguish his fire and leave him powerless. Pyro was also not fireproof despite his connection to the fire element, and he could be injured by the flames that were not under his control. Moreover, he had to concentrate on his fiery creations with great intensity to maintain his control over them or risk losing them in no time. Johnny Storm vs. Pyro. Who comes out on top in the comics? Johnny Storm and Pyro are arguably two of Marvel Comics' best fire wielders, but there is quite a notable difference in their abilities. In fact, the recent Deadpool and Wolverine movie touched up on this topic as Chris Evans appeared as the Fantastic Four's Johnny Storm, while Aaron Stanford depicted Pyro. In Marvel Comics, both these opposing forces have clashed on multiple occasions where Pyro initially appears to have the upper hand. Due to his ability to control flames, Pyro has no trouble manipulating the Human Torch's flames, but things typically take a turn from there due to the latter's inherent versatility. Pyro's powers are restricted to fire manipulation, while the Human Torch has higher stamina and enhanced immunity to fire. He also has far more skill when it comes to offense and defense, and he has often overpowered Pyro with a simple punch across many comics. In the X-Men and Fantastic Four comics, Pyro did catch the Human Torch by surprise when he lunged him into the air, but this did not last long, and Pyro was eventually defeated despite his tactics. At the end of the day, the Human Torch's ability to generate and control fire, shoot heat beams, create protective fiery auras, and still remain impervious to fire gave him an edge over Pyro, who could only control existing flames. Pyro also lacked the ability to generate fire independently, and he could only work with whatever already existed. Moreover, Pyro was not immune to the effects of fire and had to rely on protective gear, while the Human Torch was naturally resistant to fire. In the Fantastic Four comics, he once defeated Pyro by destroying his protective suit, leaving him incapacitated and in no position to retaliate. In the Deadpool and Wolverine film, their encounter was much more simplified than usual brawls, as Pyro somehow removed Johnny's powers and led him to fall from a great height. Some things like this would not happen in the comics, as Johnny had powers such as great heat projection to destroy Pyro's gear. While Pyro had the upper hand in this thrilling showdown on the big screen, there is no doubt that the Human Torch would emerge on top in the comics. Marvelous verdict. And with that, we have explored Pyro's insane story arc across Marvel Comics, as well as the inner function of his abilities. While he had established himself as a crucial member of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, he went through a lot of struggles with the Legacy Virus and Resurrection story arcs. At the end of the day, he remains a well-loved character, and fans especially enjoyed seeing him on the big screen in Deadpool and Wolverine. While we wrap up this video, stay tuned as we explore such characters, and do share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, and be safe. Thanks everyone.